Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're going to dig into this really fascinating concept called the War of Shifting Fronts.
Oh, yeah, I know that one.
Yeah, you know about this one.
Right.
We found it in this text called 55415454457 lopa.txt, and it basically describes this war that's been going on for so long that neither side even remembers why they're fighting.
Oh, wow.
It's like conflict that's just so ingrained that it's become the fabric of their reality.
That's wild. What's even more interesting is that the text implies that reality itself isn't this fixed thing. It's kind of like this dynamic thing that gets shaped and reshaped by the actions of these two warring factions.
Right. It's like they're trapped in this cosmic dance, but it's not just with each other. It's with the very world they live in.
Yeah, totally.
So who are these players in this cosmic ballet? Who are we dealing with here?
All right, so on one side, we've got the Legion of the Everlasting Bastion.
Okay.
Now think of them as like master architects obsessed with order and defense,
Right.
always striving to build the ultimate unbreachable fortress.
So these are our builders, the ones who just crave structure.
Exactly.
Great. So who's on the other side?
So their adversaries are the Phantom Raiders.
Okay.
These guys are elusive, adaptable warriors who specialize in, finding and exploiting any weaknesses.
Oh, so they love chaos.
They basically represent a force of disruption, always pushing against the Bastion's attempts to impose order.
So it's this constant like push and pull.
Yeah.
Yeah. Creation versus destruction.
Yeah.
Order versus chaos.
Exactly.
And that's what makes their world their reality.
You got it. Each action by one side, totally creates the conditions for the other side's response.
Whoa.
It's like a cycle, A self-perpetuating conflict.
So give me an example.
Like, say, the Bastion builds a wall.
Okay.
The Raiders. They'll find a way through.
Right.
Then the Raiders exploit a weakness, and the Bastion's like, oh, we got to reinforce that.
Oh, wow.
It's like each side is inadvertently fueling the other's existence.
So they're trapped. They can't escape the system they've created.
Yeah, and the really wild part is that neither side really seems to grasp, the nature of the system.
Like they're so busy fighting.
Exactly. So focused on winning the next battle that they can't see the bigger picture.
Like they don't even understand the rules of the game they're playing.
It's like a tragedy almost, being stuck in that loop.
Yeah, so we've got these two forces, locked in this perpetual struggle, shaping and reshaping their reality, but they don't even know why they're doing it.
Right.
Does the text give any hints about how this whole thing even started?
Honestly, it's pretty vague about the war's origins.
Oh, come on.
But there's this one passage that talks about a time before the fighting.
Okay.
When both sides were actually united.
What?
Yeah, they were working together to build something incredible.
That is so wild.
It's almost as if by reaching for perfection, that somehow caused their division.
So maybe this war isn't about land or resources, but something deeper.
Yeah. Like the nature of reality itself.
Oh.
It's like the text suggests that the real battle isn't between the Bastion and the Raiders, but between these fundamental forces, order and chaos,
right,
creation and destruction that are just constantly playing out everywhere.
So it's not about who wins, but what comes out of all this.
You got it. The War of Shifting Fronts.
Yeah.
It's not just a story. It's like a philosophical exploration of how we exist.
Okay. So where do we go from here? What happens next in this war that never ends?
So the text introduces these two really key figures who start to kind of question everything.
All right.
High General Orin of the Everlasting Bastion.
All right, so he's one of the builders.
And Phantom Lord Kale of the Phantom Raiders.
Okay, so he's one of the destroyers.
Right, and both of them are starting to sense that something is really off about this endless fighting.
Like they're starting to see behind the curtain?
Yeah, like they're realizing they might be puppets in a much bigger game.
Whoa, that's a scary thought.
And you know what? This realization, it leads them to make some pretty radical choices.
Okay.
That could actually shatter their entire reality.
I'm hooked. What do they do?
So General Orin, on the side of the Bastion, he starts to see that all their fancy defenses might actually be creating the weaknesses the Raiders use.
Okay.
He notices that the Raiders always seem to know what the Bastion's going to do before they even do it.
That's crazy.
It's like their attempts to create security are making them more vulnerable.
Right.
And at the same time, on the Phantom Raider side, Lord Kale, he's having his own epiphany.
Oh, really?
He's starting to think that the Bastion is adapting to their attacks.
Whoa.
Like shaping itself around their every move.
So it's like they're both waking up
Yeah,
and realizing they're not in control.
exactly.
They're caught in this cycle,
Totally.
and they don't even understand it.
Right. So what happens when they confront this? Well,
Yeah.
General Oren decides to do something radical.
Okay.
He orders the Bastion to stop reinforcing the defenses, basically saying, we're not playing your game anymore.
Wow, that's a big move. What about Kale? What does he do?
Kale. He mirrors Oren's decision.
Oh, wow.
He orders the raiders to hold their ground
Really?
and to reinforce the weaknesses.
No way.
They stop attacking and start building where they normally would have destroyed.
So both sides are breaking the pattern.
Yeah.
They're stepping outside of their roles.
Exactly.
Makes
And you
sense.
know what happens?
What?
By messing with this pattern, they trigger a chain reaction,
Okay.
and their reality starts to unravel.
What does that even mean?
I mean, like, the battlefield literally starts breaking down.
Get out.
The ground is fracturing, the sky's tearing,
Wow.
the laws of physics are going haywire.
It's like their worlds can't exist without the fighting.
Exactly. It's a reflection of their conflict.
Yeah. So without it,
It falls apart.
so what happens next?
Well, as this is all happening, both Oren and Kale get this super creepy message
Oh, no.
from some mysterious entity that's been watching the whole thing.
Watching them. Like a whole time.
It basically whispers, now the true war begins.
Ooh, that gives me chills.
Yeah. So, who is this entity? What is this true war?
Yeah, what's going on?
Well, that's what we're going to talk about in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, I can't wait.
So that voice, that entity, it's probably the most interesting part of all this.
Oh, really?
It kind of hints that all that fighting, the building and breaking, it was all just a warm-up.
Like a fake war.
A false war, yeah.
So all this time, the Bastion and the Raiders are shaping reality, but it wasn't even the real fight.
The text couldn't give us clear answers, but it does imply this entity, this observer, has been watching for who knows how long.
Whoa, so it's been watching them fight for like centuries.
Maybe even longer.
Okay, but what does it even mean? A false war.
Well, it seems like this entity might be a force of change,
Okay.
like a catalyst that shows up when things get too rigid.
So it's not about control, but disruption.
Right. And remember, the battlefield itself is falling apart.
Right.
It's like reality is being rewritten.
So there's a bigger purpose here.
It seems like it goes beyond just their little fight.
So the Bastion and the Raiders are just pawns in this cosmic game.
Right, but who's playing?
Yeah, exactly.
The text doesn't say why this entity is doing this,
Oh,
but it gives us some clues.
okay, like what?
There's this part that describes the entity as a gardener.
A gardener?
Yeah, taking care of a cosmic garden where realities are like plants.
That's kind of beautiful.
So the war shifting fronts might just be pruning.
Pruning?
Yeah, getting rid of the old stuff to make room for new stuff.
I see. So it's not just a war story.
It's more like a metaphor,
For what?
like the cycles we see in history, politics, even in our own lives,
Yeah, I can see that. Like getting stuck doing the same things over and over.
right? Even when it's not working anymore.
So how do we break free? Oren and Kale did something drastic. Do we have to do that too?
Well, the text gives us a good lesson.
Okay.
When they broke the pattern, stepped out of their roles, their reality collapsed.
Right.
It was chaotic, but it opened up the possibility for something new.
So sometimes we need to break things down to build something better.
Exactly. And that's the tough part.
Yeah, it's scary.
It is, but it's also where we can grow the most.
Okay, how do we even do that?
Think of it like this. The patterns we're stuck in, those false wars,
Hmm?
they're like walls we built around ourselves.
Walls.
They might make us feel safe, but they also limit us.
Okay, so breaking them down is like opening ourselves up to new things.
Right. Even if it's scary.
Yeah, that is kind of exciting. We get to explore new things.
Exactly. The text says the real war starts when we break free.
This is blowing my mind. The War of Shifting Fronts is like a guide to change our lives.
It reminds us that we're not just stuck, we can make choices.
Yeah, we can shape our own reality.
Right. We can pick our battles and build a world where conflict doesn't run everything.
So what patterns are we ready to break? What needs to change in our lives?
That's a great question to think about.
The War of Shifting Fronts may be over in the story, but the fight to understand ourselves has just begun.
It's time to look inside and see what amazing things we can create.
Okay, so we're talking about these false wars, the ones that are playing out in our own lives,
Yeah.
right? But how do we even know when we're stuck in one? What are the signs?
Well, I think one of the biggest red flags is this feeling of stagnation, It's like no matter what you do, you're not really moving forward.
Right, like you're just spinning your wheels, stuck in a rut.
Exactly.
Okay, but how do we know if it's a real challenge, something we got to push through, or just a false war that's wasting our energy?
That's where you got to look inward, Really pay attention to the patterns in your life.
Okay.
Are you dealing with the same problems over and over, the
Yeah.
same arguments,
Hmm.
the same obstacles? If you are, that might mean you're stuck in a cycle that's not doing you any good.
Okay, so recognizing the pattern is the first step. But how do we actually break free from these false wars?
That's where it gets really interesting, because sometimes breaking free doesn't mean fighting harder.
We really?
Yeah, sometimes it means doing the opposite,
What do you mean?
like surrendering, letting go of control, embracing your weaknesses, the things you've been hiding.
Wow, that's kind of scary.
It can be, but think about Oren and Kale.
Oh, okay.
They stopped playing their roles and everything changed.
Yeah, their whole worlds fell apart.
Right, it couldn't hold on anymore. That's the power of breaking the pattern.
So you're saying to change our lives, we need to let things fall apart.
It can feel chaotic, but it's also where you can grow the most.
But our instincts tell us to fight back, to protect ourselves.
I know, it's hard to go against that, but those patterns, those false wars,
Yeah.
they're like walls.
Wall.
Yeah, they keep you safe, but they also trap you.
Oh, I see. So breaking them down is like seeing the world in a whole new way.
Exactly. It's scary, but exciting. Who knows what you'll find?
This whole war of shifting fronts thing,
Yeah.
it's like a guide to change your life.
It reminds us that we can make choices. We're not stuck.
Yeah. We can shape our own reality.
We can choose our battles, build a better world.
So to everyone listening, what patterns are you ready to break? What needs to change?
What's holding you back?
The war of shifting fronts may be over in the text, but our own battles to understand ourselves, those have just begun.
It's time to explore and see what we can create.
Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll see you next time.